Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Ampire. Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone. What's up everybody? Solo today guys. I could not time up a taping with Callow. So therefore, you're just going to get a whole lot of me, with the exception of you'll hear a weekly segment of the podcast that I do with London Fletcher after each game called The Booth Review that is produced by the Commanders. You can check that out on their YouTube page or commanders.com or wherever you get your podcasts. We do the show after each game together where after spending the day in the booth calling the game, we let it kind of settle in and then we try to figure out what did we see, what did we think, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In this case, we didn't do the booth review on Friday. We've done it on Monday. So we got to sit on the Eagles game for a few days. So both of us shared a bunch of thoughts. And I'm going to share mine here first before you hear London's recap of the game and the way that he saw it. Plus, we had a preview, obviously, of the first Dallas meeting this weekend that we got into and all the things that we think are going to be important heading into the game this weekend. So you can check that out. You probably won't hear the Dallas part in the segment we play, so you'll have to get the whole podcast to hear all of that. All right, let's go through some of the loss at Philadelphia, which I didn't get to yesterday. Obviously, I had the reaction to it on Friday. I kind of still sit where I was, a few days ago. And really, honestly, like, I just feel like the schedule caught up with Washington. It was like the worst time possible to hit the adverse time of the schedule with the opponents that they got and the turnaround of the Thursday game. Like, their offensive line was pretty beat up. Andrew Wiley didn't play against Pittsburgh. Brandon Coleman's kind of gutting it out with a shoulder injury now. Cornelius Lucas wasn't available against Pittsburgh due to his ankle injury. Tyler Biadasz went in and out of that game, you'll recall. He's got a multitude of injuries that he's dealing with. Nick Allegretti, this guy is fighting through stuff too, but playing through all of it. Cosme had some stuff earlier in the year, but hasn't really been on the injury report, but still on the whole, the tackle position specifically with the injuries that are there, we're growing the depth, and is like Dan Quinn likes to call it, like they need to run deep. It was pretty obvious that they were getting stressed from a viability of being an effective group. And honestly, like, there are a lot of reasons why this team has the record that it has and had the record that it has. Execution, play of the offensive line, and of course Jaden Daniels' play overall are three big parts of it. I will ask this question openly now in light of the quick downturn here. And the downturn came with the attrition hitting at the wrong time on the schedule. Like, I take Minnesota as a decent example of this because I've been watching them because they've had such a great start to their season. And like Washington, probably nationally, they're considered like one of the bigger surprises. I'm surprised by them too, with Sam Darnold and their defense as it was and how out of the gates and shot out of a cannon that they were. Like, they've hit this point in the season where it's not coming as easy for them. They barely beat Jacksonville. They were in a game that they kind of led throughout against Tennessee, but they didn't really pull away, and Tennessee's really been floundering. So these are two teams that are kind of really going the wrong way, but they didn't really kind of do it with any style points. Well, like, without having watched Minnesota that closely, I'm guessing the season's catching up with them a little bit. And this is the point in the season where they're not as effective as they were. And this is where they've got to kind of pull together and pull through and just find ways to win. No style points needed. And they got the right opponents for it. Like, they still have to go out and win, but they got the right opponents for it. Washington, having lost the people that they've lost, been without the people they've been without, and the period of time at which, like, they've hit kind of the adverse part of we just need to kind of hang in there and just get a win however we can get a win. They hit the wrong opponents at the wrong time. 4 losses combined between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. The Eagles have outside of Detroit, been the best team in the NFL over the last 6 weeks. And Pittsburgh just beat Baltimore yesterday and are streaking towards potentially a division championship and have one of the best defenses in the NFL. So there's no, like, I think the timing of all this wasn't right. The setup wasn't wrong. This team is still 7-4, had a weekend off, and let's see what they look like on the other side. But I do want to bring up this one other thing that I do just kind of wonder about as we kind of think through all of this and where they are and why the downturn came. They ran a ton of up-tempo, still have, and did so the other night against Philadelphia. It's kind of their identity on offense. I don't take issue with it being their identity. It works. They've been a top 5 offense. I'll have to look at the standings and the statistics this week, but they've been a top 5 offense essentially since the jump. And they've been a top 3 scoring offense essentially since the jump. So it's hard to argue with what they've been able to accomplish, right? So I'm not going to sit here and complain that they did this, but think about all the attrition, where they've landed, and that they're just kind of looking physically kind of tired and beat, caught the wrong teams at the wrong time. It does beg the question of, did all of the up-tempo stuff that led them to be in the position they were in, did that kind of catch up with them here at this point in the season? And I don't really know the answer to that. It's just partially a theory. And it all could just be, hey, look, a bunch of guys got injured at the same time, really the wrong time of the season. The schedule turned around to go to Philadelphia 3 days after a tough physical loss to a really good team. Like, this was set up for failure from the get-go. And had they won either one of them, I probably wouldn't even mention something like this or really think this way. But the reality is they did lose both. This one on Thursday did get away from them. And in rewatching it, it really didn't look as bad as I felt that it was when we were there, with the exception of the 3-4 minute stretch where it unraveled. And it was the first time this year that we've seen anything like that happen to them, you know, for any period of time. Like in the opener, I don't really count the opener. In the opener, they could not stop Tampa. Now, they were somewhat their own worst enemy because they had like 5 sacks that Baker Mayfield got out of, and maybe it would have been a little bit different, and maybe not. They really didn't have a lot of answers for them, but it was their opener, and I kind of just pass it off as they played a really good team on the road in their opener, experienced team, been together a while, like whatever, they lost, and so it wasn't a great opening performance, whatever, like it doesn't matter. When they went to Baltimore and they took what I would describe as their first real, okay, let's take stock loss. They couldn't stop them. Like, I liked when Dan Quinn used the word lopsided after it, because it really was on that side of the ball. I appreciate the offense hung in there. I appreciate that Jaden played really well. I appreciate the clutch nature. I appreciate the no give up, but like the score wasn't indicative, I think, of really how badly, you know, Baltimore actually won the game. I just give credit to the offense for kind of keeping them in the whole thing. The third loss with Pittsburgh was a little bit different. The third loss with Pittsburgh was, we're starting to see this trend. It happened against Chicago. It happened against the Giants. It happened against Pittsburgh. And now it's happened again against Philadelphia. The defense is giving up a lot of points in the second half. They are wearing down in the second half. And I'd love to talk to, you know, Dan Quinn and Joe Witt about what's going on in the second half. Do they, quote, run as deep as they need to? Are they talented enough on that side of the ball to overcome some of the deficiencies? But it's happened now 4 weeks in a row where teams have scored bare minimum, I believe it's 14 points in the second half on all of them. In the case of the Eagles, they had 20 in the fourth quarter against them, where they just went bam, 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 and scored really, really quickly. They took their first lead, missed the extra point. I'll get to the drive where that Washington made the decision they made to go for it, and it failed, and that kind of opened the floodgates against them, and then all of a sudden it just went downhill. The Eagles went down and scored, got the interception, scored again, and it's just like, it was like a tidal wave hit over them, and the whole thing was over. But I do wonder, like, what's going on over there? So for the offense, I look at, okay, let's have a theory here. Did they go up tempo too much? Now, like, it's hard to complain about it. Their record is what it is, and their offensive stats are what they are. So it's hard not to say, well, that's part of the reason why they're where they are. They executed it at a very high clip. But here they are with a team that needs a break really badly, and they got a third of the season to go. Was a long weekend and an impending bye going to be enough to push them through to get them to the playoffs and be in an optimal position to perform when the playoffs roll around? I guess we'll just have to wait and see to get an answer to that. Defensively, the bigger question is, why do they continue to falter and get weaker in the second half? And it's happened 4 weeks in a row. The Giants made their game probably closer than I would have expected. I never felt that was really kind of out of hand, or it was ever really in jeopardy the way when we were there. In the same way that I never really felt like once Philadelphia got the 2-score lead that Washington realistically had a chance to come back. It was the same way that the Giants score I felt didn't feel like indicative of how much better I thought Washington played than the Giants, to the point of the game where the Giants scored the late score to make it a game and have an opportunity to come back and win. So those are the two overarching things that I'm watching here. Attrition on offense to Jaden and the offensive line. Can they get healthier and enough to start executing the way they did earlier in the season? And then on defense, what's the fix here? And is that the addition of Marshawn Lattimore that helps them do some other things? Is it some other rotational pieces that they need to work on? Is it schematic? I don't know, but like clearly as things have progressed here, they have gotten weaker over the last month in each of the second halves. I think the drive that really actually changed everything in the game against Philadelphia actually happened in the second quarter. They were up 7-0. Philadelphia had already missed a couple of field goals, caught a couple of breaks, and then they had a couple of very good defensive series. Washington, of course, scored on the touchdown after one of the misses where Austin Eckler had a big play. Brian Robinson had a big run, got him to the 1-yard line. They punched it in, took the lead. At 7-0, middle of the second quarter, I think the outcome of the game is utterly changed if they score on this one particular drive that ended with about 4 minutes left in the half. They got the ball at their own 27-yard line, 8:13 to go in the quarter. Daniel starts the drive out of the gun with a pass to De'Ami Brown. It goes for 4 yards. Next play is 2nd and 6. Brian Robinson runs the ball, gets 7, first down. Next play, shotgun. Daniels throws out to B-Rob for a 9-yard gain. So they're really starting to move now. They went from their 27 to the 47 in just a few plays. 2nd and 1, Austin Eckler, great cutback, if you recall, nice run, gets him a first down. But they get a holding penalty. That was on De'Ami Brown, moves them back to the 38-yard line. So they go 2nd and 10 here. And in recent weeks, that would have stunted them and stunted the drive, but not this time. On 2nd and 10, Daniels finds Eckler, gains 6, gets him into a good third and manageable situation, 3rd and 4. And that's when he hit one of his biggest passes of the game, a connection with Zach Ertz into Philadelphia territory for 9 yards at the 47. Drive continues. On 1st and 10, he scrambles, just gets a yard. On 2nd and 9, this is where he threw the deep incomplete to Noah Brown. This was one of the misses. What's happened over the last few weeks is the inability to execute, whether it's drops, penalties, or misses that we weren't accustomed to early in the season. The pinpoint accuracy that Daniels was showing throughout the early part of the season was the reason why everyone's going, this guy's a lock to win Offensive Rookie of the Year and maybe more. That's been off here for the last couple of weeks, and we're trying to figure out why. We saw the Steelers and the Giants pressure more than they usually do. We saw in this case the Eagles winning with 4 a lot. Jalen Carter was a big story. I'll get to him in a moment. Daniels was backpedaling more than I'm accustomed to seeing. So is this he's not moving as well because, I don't know, the season is catching up with him a little bit? Was this the Eagles doing something to confuse him and force him to go backwards? Was this Jalen Carter blowing up play after play after play and kind of forcing him in this position? Either way, that was a huge miss there. But they had an opportunity to get it right back on a 3rd and 9 when he threw that short pass that may or may not have been deflected but was dropped by Austin Eckler. So drive stops at the Philadelphia 46-yard line. One penalty, they did overcome it. One really bad miss throw down the field, and they had no downfield throws at all, and then a drop pass. That encompassed the entire Pittsburgh game from the week before, where they lost by a point, but their execution was off in a way that we hadn't really seen, and it ended up costing them in the end. That's the drive. to me. That's the one. That is the one where this thing ended up going sideways. Philadelphia responded with a 15-play drive that got all the way down for what would end up being their first points of the game, a field goal, and made it 7-3. I didn't feel like the momentum had shifted at that point, but that was the drive in a low-ish scoring game, which is what we had, that had they cashed in and scored a touchdown there, or even a field goal there, and then I think we're thinking about the rest of the game entirely differently at that point, but it didn't happen. So that was the one that really stood out to me as really the moment where it got away from them in terms of seizing some control over all of it. I mentioned Jalen Carter. This was singularly one of the best performances that Washington has dealt with all year. I want to credit them this way too. Dexter Lawrence barely made the stat sheet when they played him in both of the games they played, and specifically the last one. Myles Garrett famously did not make the stat sheet when they played against him. For that matter, with Lawrence, Brian Burns was not much of a factor. Ojulari wasn't much of a factor against them. They blitzed more than they usually blitz, and I credited the backs for picking up so much of the pressure and Washington giving Daniels the time to do what he needed to do. But Carter, he was an impact player against them. We've had other examples of other players, obviously, they've played star-stud players that haven't been able to have an impact. Carter did. He messed up so many plays. He got in on that drive that really kind of blew things up. And then in the second half, where things really kind of went wrong for Washington, their D-line wore down very badly. Saquon is a massive difference maker for Philadelphia, but at halftime, he had like 15 carries for 50-plus yards. He was under 4 yards a carry. So while he had volume carries, he didn't hurt them. And he had a couple, 8-yard runs, whatever it was, but like he didn't hurt them. In the second half, once things started to kind of go the wrong way, this is where someone like that just basically took over. And he became a difference maker. And I'll reiterate what I said last week and what I feel this week. He's got to be up for Offensive Player of the Year and maybe MVP. It was his legs and his scoring ability that kept them early in the season when their offense wasn't performing the way that it's performing now. And he's the difference maker for them. If he's going to continue at this clip, he's going to end up with probably 1,800 yards rushing. The only number that isn't going to be gaudy is touchdowns, because every time they get inside the 5, they hand it off to Jalen Hurts, and he's kind of vulturing all the touchdowns. Otherwise, Saquon would have a crazy touchdown total as well. So he is, and has been the difference for them. And if the Eagles end up winning a Super Bowl, it's going to be the Giants' fault for allowing this to happen, for allowing that to take place, for allowing him to end up on that team. It's patently ridiculous that it happened. All right, so let's get to the one other thing, and I want to revisit the drive in the fourth quarter with about 8 minutes to go after the Eagles had finally taken the lead, 12-10. And that was on the Hurts plunge run that he got. So it's 12-10. They missed the extra point. Washington responds really well, gets all the way down the field, and gets themselves into position. John Bates makes the catch inside the 25-yard line. He goes out of bounds about a foot early. It gives up second and inches. So they go, predictably, they go to B-Rob. Jalen Carter steps up and makes what is going to ultimately be the play of the game, because it moved them back about a half a yard. So this went from second and inches to second and about a full yard. Third down, they go back to the ground. Not surprised, and they actually run. They try to get away from Jalen Carter, which I agree was cognizant of what was happening out there on the field. But this time, Jordan Davis ends up taking on a couple of blocks and just becomes a stone wall and gets in the way of it. He doesn't necessarily initially make the tackle or the play, but he's the one that forced it just enough to slow it down just enough that there was no momentum to get the first down. And actually, by the time Robinson was tackled, he goes backwards, and they're now in a 4th and 2. Okay, at this point, right, I understand that this team has been phenomenal on 4th down. I understand that they think they need touchdowns to win, and I totally agree with that. But with 8 minutes to go on the road, you've had 2 straight plays that went literally backwards. You have a kicker who, yes, I know he's new and all that, but he hasn't missed yet. Right? He hasn't missed yet. He made one earlier in the half as well, made a couple of weeks. He hasn't missed yet. And the other side has a kicker who's missed 2 field goals and an extra point already. While I agree that they probably needed to score more than 13 to win, I'm kicking here. and I kick here to try to get the lead, and it puts 8 minutes on the clock, and it says to the Eagles, if you don't score a touchdown, we are going to put you in the weird position of having to trust the kicker who the fans are freaked out is going to miss again. And I would prefer to have him in that position. And if they win, they win. But what if they're 4th and 2 from the Washington 25 and they decide, you know what? We don't trust this kicker. We're going to go for it. Make them make those types of decisions. And that didn't happen. So it really is the first time, especially after going backwards 2 plays in a row. It's the first time that I questioned a decision that was made by the coaching staff. I think that they should have kicked the ball there. Doesn't mean he would have made it. Doesn't mean the Eagles wouldn't have won anyway. But I liked looking up at the scoreboard and seeing 13-12 as opposed to what ended up happening. 12-10, they lose the ball. Obviously, the play on 4th down wasn't executed well. Jaden said he didn't get the cadence right. It wasn't loud enough. The offensive linemen were going in different directions, so I did think there was some confusion there. And then he just tried to make a play himself, and unfortunately, he couldn't get to the edge. And, it gets blown up. And the rest is history now. Everything, went sideways. And the last thing I would say about it is this, is everything did, remember, this is still a 2-point game when that happened. It's still a 2-point game. And for the first time, I think we saw them crack a little bit because everything that happened from that point forward happened really fast. Eagles go down the field, score, get an interception, score again, cascading problem, game's now over. Even though it wasn't. With 4-something left, they get the ball back to Washington. All of a sudden, they're in a game that got completely out of hand. But it was the first time that I felt like after that call that the team kind of lost their focus. And the defensive line wore down and were getting blown off the ball. And it was surprising to see. Now, I'll give them credit for the resilience of going downfield. I understand everyone's criticism of they didn't do it fast enough. I agree with that. You're going to, London, if you listen to the booth review, you'll hear his reasoning as to why he thought it took so long. Did they have enough urgency? I wouldn't argue that they didn't show enough urgency. Did they take what they were given? Yeah. Did it take too long to score that touchdown? Yeah. All those things can be true. I remember sitting there going, this game's over. I mean, it just got flipped upside down so fast. And it was the first time I've seen kind of their will attacked a little bit. And that was surprising to see. Anyway, I think the long weekend's going to help. I know I feel refreshed. Let's see what happens with Dallas this weekend. It's obviously a very different team than the one we thought we were going to get at the beginning of the season. I think the odds makers have Washington almost a 10-point favorite. So let's see what we get this weekend. See if the long break or the extra break gets them to turn everything back around. And then we'll see what we get on the other side of that when they go into a week against Tennessee. And again, I'll go back to what we were talking about last week because this felt like a bad setup all along for all the reasons why I'm concerned. If they do end up 9-4 or even 8-5, but 9-4 off of the next 2 at home, we'll forget about this week as the blip in the season. And then they'll head into a bye. And then it'll be a sprint to the end to see what kind of playoff positioning they get in. Not whether they make it, what position they get. All right, be right back with London ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast here to tell you about Michelob Ultra Courtside. It's getting fans closer to the NBA with a chance to win prizes like courtside seats, a trip to All-Star Weekend, and much more. Check it out at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access, Courtside 24-25 Sweepstakes, no purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 and up. Begins on October 1st, 2024. Ends July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/courtside for free entry deadlines, and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Welcome back. Every week I get an opportunity to catch up with my booth mate, London Fletcher, the all-time great linebacker. We call the games on Sundays, or in this past case, Thursday. And then the day after, typically, not on Friday, this past case, Monday, we have what we call the Booth Review, which is produced by the Commanders. You can check out the entire episode at commanders.com, the Commanders YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts. And so a few days after the Philadelphia loss, London and I got a chance to catch up and share some thoughts moving forward. We had a weekend off after a Thursday game as we head into our first Dallas week of the season. London, what'd you do over the weekend?
Oh, man, I slept most of the day on Saturday. So Friday when I got back from Philly, my son, they played it in the state championship game. So the North Carolina Independent State Championship game was played in Georgia. Now, that's a long story as to why it was played in Georgia. They played a team about 3.5 hours away in Raven Gap County, Georgia. Went down there. It was an epic game. My son's team, Providence Day School, they ended up losing 42-39. Came up just a little bit short in that game. And, after that, got back on the road, drove back to Charlotte 3.5 hours. So I was exhausted Saturday. I sat down, watched a little bit of football, and then it started watching me. Got to go to church on Sunday. So that was a good thing. I didn't do a whole lot other than sleep and watch a little bit of football and spend time with the family.
42-39. Was it a controversial finish?
No, it wasn't a controversial finish. It was an epic game, back and forth. Probably the best high school football game I can remember. Like our team would go up 3 points and they come back, get a 4-point lead. We take the lead again by 3. They get 4. They were up 3. We got stopped. They scored, got a 2-point conversion, went up 8. We scored a touchdown, got a 2-point conversion. Down 3 with about 30, let's call it 35, 36 seconds left. And their kicker, Providence Day's kicker, my son's team, his kicker had the best onside kick I've ever seen. I mean, there are NFL teams can't have an onside kick like this. We recovered, but we landed out of bounds on the recovery. I mean, it was just a phenomenal, perfect, just couple bounce, small bounces. High bounce. One of our players jumps up, catches it, but he came down out of bounds, man. And they were able to run the clock out, and that's how they won the game.
Send the film to Larry Izzo. We needed one of those the other night.
I know. I better yet send the kicker to Larry Izzo. Maybe he can. I don't know if he's able to come. Maybe he can come teach our kickers how to do this onside kick, because it was the exact way you want to execute an onside kick. What about you? What you do for the weekend?
So over the weekend, I got to call the Washington Spirit take on the Gotham FC in the NWSL semifinal, which had this ridiculous finish at Audi Field that involved a stoppage time goal to send it to extra time. It got to penalty kicks. Goalkeeper for Washington, Aubrey Kingsbury, made 3 straight saves on penalty kicks. Like, it was practically unbelievable. So congratulations to the Spirit. They're going to be playing in the NWSL Championship Saturday night against Orlando out in Kansas City. So we wish them the best of luck. And then, like you, Sunday, I just had NFL football on, but it was more watching me than me watching it. I was kind of going in and out of Pittsburgh, Baltimore, going in and out of Green Bay, Chicago. Both were really good, really close games. And I actually want to talk about some of the results because I don't think a lot of stuff broke Washington's way over the weekend. I'll get to that in a little bit. But same thing, like I needed some rest. And I even gave myself a couple days in rewatching the Commanders and Eagles because I wanted to do that before we spoke here. But I needed a mental break. And I think that's like kind of a larger point of this like week, honestly. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think the season got long on this team. The schedule hit them at the worst time possible with 2 very, very good teams in a 4-day span. And I think they needed a mental and physical break. And unfortunately, they didn't get a win in either one of them. But I don't know how that kind of sits with you now because I needed it after Thursday night. I didn't rewatch that Eagles game until last night, honestly.
Yeah, no, it's been a long season, and I'm sure most of the guys really appreciated the weekend off and just to kind of hit the reset button. Not just the players, but the coaches as well. It's been emotional too, if you think about it, going all the way back to the Hail Mary play against the Chicago Bears. That was an emotional game that you have to You go to your division rival, the New York Giants, play that game. Then you come back and play the short week against – or no, you play the Pittsburgh Steelers and another tough football game, and then short week against the Philadelphia Eagles. So let's call the last 4 ball games have been extremely emotional. Emotion is that emotional roller coaster. You lose by 1 point to the Steelers, and then you come up short against the Philadelphia Eagles. So no, it's definitely a situation where you need some time off. I started watching a little bit of the game. I'm kind of just weird like this. Let's call it early Friday morning, while still in the hotel in Philly. You know, I did look at some of it, and then I watched it again on would have been Saturday. Yes, Saturday, and then again today, just looking at it again. And when you go back and you look at it, and I'm sure we'll get deep into it, there's so many things, so many opportunities that we had that we could have definitely changed the outcome of that ball game. And I'm sure Coach Quinn felt the same way once they watched the game. There were enough things that we could have done differently to make that outcome go in our favor.
Yeah, I think to go back to your point about and like that it's been long. Like go back to the preseason. They spent 2 weeks on the road. Remember, they went to Miami, they went to New York, they spent full weeks there. They spent a full week in Arizona after the Cincinnati game, which was, I think it was so early, and everybody was just kind of so excited about what they saw that, and I don't think like the season had caught up to them at that point. That was a really emotional thing too that happened. It was kind of the first real like. The nation saw them. They saw them do something amazing. Jaden had that kind of coming out party, the catch to McLaurin. It was an incredible win. Nobody nationally thought they were going to win that game. Then they went straight to Arizona. They were out there the entire week, turned a big game. Then we get to the Hail Mary. I didn't know how they were going to respond after that because that had never happened before. They're getting a tremendous amount of attention. Remember, Dan Quinn even admitted like it took an extra couple of days to really get over it by the time they got to the Giants and they won. And then you could just feel it. Like some of the injuries were starting to kind of add up, especially on the offensive line. Jaden was still dealing with a rib injury. He's got some minor stuff with his hand, which I assume is kind of okay. You could feel the attrition and the weight and the length of the season was catching up to them. And it's just unfortunate that they lost that Pittsburgh game because I think everybody would feel a little different about exactly where they are had they won that Pittsburgh game and they were 8-3 instead of 7-4. I still think they're in an incredible position, but I kind of largely feel like this is a lot of the weight of the season hit them at the wrong time where the schedule was really kind of up against it. And now, long weekend, couple of home games, bye week. I'm hoping it regenerates a lot as they kind of hit the home stretch of the season here.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that way. But even with that, and you talk about the emotions of the Hail Mary game, and then we play the Giants and then the Steelers game. All these games, even in the 2 losses, I think you learned a lot more about this football team in terms of the mental toughness, the physical toughness, the emotional toughness of these teams, because in these games, you go toe to toe, blow for blow with the Pittsburgh team, and you had the lead late in that game, and obviously Pittsburgh was able to get the late scoring and win that ball game. You're in Philadelphia on Thursday Night Football on the road. Got a lead in the fourth quarter. Got an opportunity. Maybe you can kick a field goal to take a lead, go up, and you're battling these teams into the fourth quarter and late into these ball games. So that just shows that the amount of fight in these football teams and our football team. Where in past years, maybe these games aren't that close. They're blowouts in the first half, and you're looking your wounds and like, oh man, let's just hurry up and get to this weekend. But as you saw, the amount of fight in our team, stand with it. It's a testament to Coach Quinn and the way he's built this team. It's also a testament to the players and how competitive they are. They're not concerned about what's ahead of them. They're just worried about what's right in front of them right now. And we'll deal with next week when we deal with next week. But let's focus on the Steelers. Let's focus on the Giants. Let's focus on the Eagles. Whatever that task is, whatever that opponent is, whoever that opponent is, and wherever it's at, let's focus on that. And, you mentioned the reset and hoping not even we got the Cowboys this Sunday. And I know we got a bye coming up in a couple weeks. I'm sure the messaging is to them, let's only focus on the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Let's focus on how can we get a win in our building against a division rival to get kind of this 2-game losing streak out of our mouth.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's go through the Philadelphia game a little bit. And I want to go back, and I kind of want to just kind of go chronological order. I mean, I've seen a trend here with Washington when they're facing teams that have big-time threats on the outside, which is, I'm going to turn to Marshawn Lattimore in a minute because we haven't seen him yet, and we don't know what his presence is going to mean for how they can do things differently. But for the here and now, a couple of weeks ago when they played New York, they backed off. I think that they didn't want Malik Neighbors to beat them deep, and they openly admitted that after the game. And therefore, the Giants had a lot of rush yards and time of possession, but didn't have a lot of points. It worked out in their favor. I saw a similar thing. I don't know if you saw it this week as well. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith is a massive duo. This was going to be a very difficult matchup for them. And they knew it's pick your poison with Saquon Barkley. But early, similarly, it felt like they were allowing a run game to occur. And then when the Eagles got into position, you're hoping for a mistake, or in the case of the other night, misses on field goals, and it worked out in their favor. So I don't know how you kind of saw it early, but I saw a similar, at least schematic thought process by Joe Witt and company. You're just not going to beat us with big plays, and we're going to play the clock, and we're going to hopefully have a lead and trust our offense. But what did you see defensively in the first half that limited to Philadelphia to 3 points?
Well, it was a lot of, let's call it two-shell type of situations, showing double coverage type of schemes pre-snap, before the ball is snapped, just to kind of invite them to run the football, not allow the explosive plays like you mentioned. Now, I will say this: they may have shown the two shells, but then they would rotate to bringing an eighth man in the box, and sometimes I probably felt like they maybe could have did it even a little bit more, but it was a situation where, hey, we don't want to give up the explosive plays. Now, Saquon Barkley, for the most part in the first half, I don't think he really was, he maybe had some 8-yard runs, stuff like that, but not a lot. He was
held under 4 yards per carry in the first half. That was a win. He had like 15 carries for 50-something yards. It was a win in the first half.
Absolutely.
They invited them to run, and Barkley didn't burn them.
Yeah, and that's what you want. They got two explosive plays, one on a RPO where, you go play action, or you go run, and the quarterback Hurst is reading our second-level defenders, linebackers, or safety. We come up to stop the run. There's a window open, and he hit A.J. Brown on a slant, and he also hit Devontae Smith on a slant. That were two big plays. Those were their explosives in the first half. Really, the only two explosive plays that I can remember them having in the first half of that ball game, and those were off of RPOs where, hey, you got run favorable type of situation, looks. We think it's a run. We suck up on a run game, and he hit the couple quick slants in those voided windows. But again, from a standpoint of, if you can hold Saquon Barkley to under 4 yards per carry in the first half of a ball game, and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith aren't really killing you in the game, you got to be happy with that from a defensive standpoint, and that's what kind of happened. I think defensively in the second half, especially late in the game, we kind of got worn down. We were on the field a lot in that ball game. Offense never really was able to get into a true rhythm in that ball game. So I think eventually the defense just got worn out.
Yeah, one other thing I want to point out too, again, like this felt like the bend don't break scenario. If they get into a short field, situation in the red zone, this is where this team's going to have to stand up and force them into either field goal attempts. Right. They got fortunate with one early miss. I want to thank Philadelphia for what was a really poorly timed trick play where they tried to run a reverse and threw it back to Hurts, and Luvu just happened to be waiting for him. If you actually go watch this play, Luvu got pushed into Jalen Hurts like they had missed a block on him badly, and the last-ditch attempt was to kind of try to push him away from where the ball was going to be and pushed him literally directly into him. So this is what they were looking for. I think the first half couldn't have gone much better than it did, with the exception of the offense, to your point, really couldn't get into much of a rhythm outside of a couple of drives.
Yeah, and the red zone, defensively, we held them, 1 for in the red zone. So if you're not allowing them to get touchdowns in those situations, keep you in the lead, keep you in the game, and for the most part had a lead up until the fourth quarter. It was about 8. I can't remember when Philly had their.
It was about 8 minutes to go. Yeah.
To go ahead and score, but defensively, like you said, bend don't break. Didn't allow too many explosive. Forced them to kick field goals as the red zone and the field kind of restricts. Now you're okay playing a lot more man-to-man coverage because you're not worried about your corners getting beat deep. I thought they played outstanding and a couple of fade balls that they tried to throw against him in the red area. So he stood up when he needed to stand up in those situations. And it's just it's a situation where offensively we weren't truly efficient in the run game. We also kind of shot ourselves in the foot on it was 2nd and 1. We end up, not getting converted 2nd and 1, 3rd and 1, or 4th and 2. That was the 4th down when we're down, 13-10 in that game? I think it was
12.
13-12 at that point.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't convert that 4th down situation. It was a 3rd and 4. There was a, other like short 3rd and short situation, 2 to 5, where we did convert for one reason or another. Maybe it was an accurate throw, or the protection wasn't good enough in those situations. So there was enough things that we didn't do well enough that cost us that game.
Remember, you can hear the entire Booth Review podcast or see it on the Commanders YouTube channel or commanders.com, or listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. Be right back. Bram Weiss, the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Behind the delivery trucks that keep your life stocked, thousands of employees at BP go to work every day. People bringing a new offshore production platform online. People making our refineries capable of more, like making renewable diesel from agricultural waste. People trading and shipping fuels to our customers. And people helping truckers fill up and get maintenance at our convenient locations. They're part of the more than 300,000 jobs BP supports across the country. Learn more at bp.com/investing in America.
I just want to take a few moments to talk about the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight over the weekend, of which I've seen a variety of people's opinions come out about it. Most notably, that there seems to be some kind of doubt that this was anything other than a stunt between the two of them, Paul and Tyson. The rest of it was on the up and up, with the exception of maybe the first of the 4 fights where there was somebody who was like some social media influencer from South America fighting an actual real fighter from India, and the real fighter won. But whatever, that was no big deal. That was the first of 4 fights, and that happened at 8:30 at night. The next 2 were beyond legitimate bouts, and if you weren't exposed much to boxing, and I don't know who is these days, and I'm going to get to the larger point of that in a minute, Then you saw what championship boxing actually looks like. That was a welterweight fight between two boxers who, I'll admit, I'd never heard of either one of them. A championship bout, and it was amazing. It went the distance. It was back and forth. Both fighters went down. There was like legitimate surprise from the commentary crew about the comeback of the challenger, who they didn't seem to think had much of a fight in him, or much of a chance. And it was incredible entertainment. And then came the women's fight, who, again, I'm now aware that these two fighters are like world famous in the women's class, but I've never seen anything like that. It was like straight out of a movie, and I'm not even really sure how both of them didn't get knocked out. And one of them had a cut that was straight out of like a horror film over her eye, and she fought through it anyway and got through like 4 rounds with this ridiculous cut. Then they like cut to her trainer, who basically cursed out the other boxer for headbutting her and getting it in the first place. It was amazing. It was amazing entertainment. And that was, again, a legitimate fight. That's where that part of it stopped. Like, they gave you the entertainment. I mean, Jake Paul gave you the legitimate boxing entertainment. And then he says he's the face of boxing. And the truth is, he is. 60 million people apparently watched this thing. Everybody's stream broke. Mine actually lost its sound in the middle of it. A lot of others, I saw like it, froze, or you couldn't get back in. I'm following Twitter the whole time going, okay, if something happens because it was pixelating, what do you do? Everybody was saying, do not touch it. Do not go out and try to go back in. You won't be able to get back in. So I left mine. So I got to actually see the whole thing. At times it was a little fuzzy and pixelated or whatever, but that's not even really the point. Like, the technical issues are Netflix and Netflix's alone issues. Jake Paul had an incredible entrance. Mike Tyson had an incredible entrance. The interview with, I think that was his kid, where he kissed him and then he turns around, you see his butt, was great theater. Tyson gave a couple of crazy interviews leading up to the whole thing. Then they get into the ring, and it becomes relatively clear that this is not going to be overly competitive. And whatever, who thought it was going to be? Like, you had to suspend belief in anything real to not think that this was pro wrestling at its finest. And in the end, I think Tyson was probably trying. And I think in the end, Jake Paul's younger and in way better shape and took it easy on him. And we can all see that, and it's clear as day. But anybody who sat there and wrote some paper like disappointed or pissed off that they didn't get the fight that they thought they were going to see, how stupid are you? Like, what did you expect to actually happen? But the reality is, if you actually paid attention, like, you saw actual legitimate championship boxing and what that can look like. You saw what promotion can look like. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know a lot about Jake Paul or his career. I don't. I'm too old to have been part of a YouTube generation or part of his kind of influencer, style rise to fame. So I didn't know a ton about him. I do realize that he's a muckraker and he's someone that causes a lot of attention. He doesn't mind being a villain, and he took up boxing legitimately to make a name for himself. And he's done so aggressively and successfully. That was by far the biggest promoted fight in years. And maybe the biggest one since who? Floyd Mayweather, Canelo Alvarez, Triple G, maybe. And that's maybe. Like, there was a much larger audience for this, albeit it was on Netflix, so it was technically free if you were a Netflix subscriber. But anyone who sits here and complains about this, that, or the other thing with him, don't realize that this guy's a literal genius. And I appreciated every moment of the whole thing. And I had no expectation that I would see anything. In fact, I think I got more than I thought it was going to be. I legitimately thought it was a wrestling stunt, like it wasn't even going to be real on any level. And I appreciate that both of them let it be real to whatever level it was. And if you are wondering, was Tyson serious about it? He tweeted this after this, and it really got me. He said this: "This is one of those situations when you lost but still won. I'm grateful for last night. No regrets to get in the ring one last time. I almost died in June, had 8 blood transfusions, lost half my blood and 25 pounds in the hospital, and had to fight to get healthy to fight, so I won. To have my children see me stand toe-to-toe and finish 8 rounds with a talented fighter half my age in front of a packed Dallas Cowboys stadium is an experience that no man has the right to ask for. Thank you." That was real. That was real. It was as real as you could possibly ask it to be. Was it what you wanted out of it from seeing Mike knock this guy out, or for the sickos to see Jake Paul knock him out? No, you didn't get that. But anybody who says they weren't entertained or didn't get their money's worth, they don't understand what just happened. That was truly one of the greatest stunts I've ever seen in my life, and they drew everybody in. So congratulations to Jake Paul for pulling off what is seemingly the impossible dreams, because it occurred. All right, that'll do it. Talk to you tomorrow. Bram Show, ESPN 630 Sportscast.